China has dreamed of taking Taiwan for decades. But what if I told you that one of the biggest obstacles in their way is not just America or Japan, but the Philippines? Yes, the Philippines is quietly ruining China's master plan to conquer Taiwan. And the more you look at the details, the more you realize that without controlling or bypassing the Philippines, China has almost no chance of pulling off a successful invasion. From the beginning, China's strategy to take Taiwan has always relied on speed, surprise, and overwhelming force. They need to send hundreds of thousands of troops across the Taiwan Strait, launch waves of missiles, and isolate Taiwan from outside help. If they can cut off the US, Japan, and other allies from getting close, then Taiwan might fall quickly. But here is where the Philippines completely changes the game. Look at the map. The Philippines sits right under Taiwan. It forms part of what military experts call the first island chain. This chain stretches from Japan, through Taiwan, all the way down to the Philippines. And it is like a natural wall blocking China's navy from moving freely into the Pacific. If China wants to attack Taiwan, they can't just ignore this wall, because US bases in Okinawa, Japan, and the Philippines can choke them off immediately. Now, for years, China tried to bully the Philippines by grabbing islands in the South China Sea, building military bases on artificial reefs, and using their Coast Guard to push Filipino fishermen out. But something changed recently. Instead of staying silent, the Philippines started fighting back. They upgraded alliances with the United States, signed new defense agreements, and gave America access to more bases, including some that sit right next to Taiwan. This means if China launches an invasion, US planes, drones, and ships can operate directly from Philippine territory. And that ruins China's entire plan. Imagine China sending hundreds of ships toward Taiwan. Suddenly, American bombers are flying from bases in Luzon in northern Philippines, within striking distance of those ships. Submarines can also move in, and the US does not even have to start from Guam or Hawaii anymore. The Philippines provides the perfect frontline location for quick response. And China knows it. That is why Beijing constantly tries to scare the Philippines with threats. But here's the problem. Those threats no longer work, because the Philippines is getting stronger and more confident. Recently, the Philippines held joint military drills with the US, Japan, and even Australia, some of the largest drills ever seen in the region. And these drills were not just symbolic. They practiced island defense, amphibious assaults, and anti-ship operations. In other words, the exact kind of warfare needed to stop a Chinese invasion force from crossing into Taiwan's waters. So every time China looks at Taiwan, they are forced to factor in the Philippines. And it gets worse for them, because Taiwan itself has also started working closely with Manila. The two share intelligence, cooperate on Coast Guard missions, and openly discuss how to handle emergencies if war breaks out. This means China cannot isolate Taiwan as easily as they hoped. Instead of cutting Taiwan off, they now face a chain of nations working together. Japan above Taiwan, the Philippines below Taiwan, and the US linking everything in between. It is a nightmare scenario for Beijing. Another major reason the Philippines ruins China's plan is geography. Taiwan is only about 100 miles off China's coast. But if you measure the distance from northern Philippines to Taiwan, it is less than 500 miles. That's close enough for US and allied jets to reach Taiwan in under an hour. Close enough for missiles to strike Chinese fleets. And close enough for supply lines to stay open in wartime. And this is a huge problem for China, because the #1 rule of any invasion is secure your supply lines. Without them, your troops collapse quickly. China may be able to land forces on Taiwan, but keeping them supplied with food, ammunition, and reinforcements becomes almost impossible when U.S. forces in the Philippines are cutting off their routes. China knows this, and it terrifies them. That's why their state media always warns the Philippines not to let Americans use their bases. They call it dangerous and provocative. But deep down, they know it is game over if the Philippines stands firm. Let's also not forget about the South China Sea. This area is vital for China's military because it connects them to the Pacific and gives them room to operate their submarines. But the Philippines is right in the middle of it. U.S. forces positioned in Philippine bases can monitor Chinese submarines, track their ships, and shut down their access to deep waters. If a war over Taiwan begins, China risks being trapped in shallow coastal waters where their navy is vulnerable to American and Allied attacks. In fact, some analysts call the Philippines the cork in the bottle for China's navy. Remove the cork, and China can move out. Keep the cork in place, and they are stuck. Now let's talk about something many people overlook: the will of the Filipino people. Despite years of harassment by Chinese ships, blocking fishing boats, using water cannons, and building bases on stolen reefs, Filipinos have not backed down. Instead, they have become even more determined to defend their waters and stand with allies. This spirit matters, because wars are not only about weapons, but also about resolve. China might have more ships and planes, but if the people of the Philippines are motivated to resist, then Beijing faces a united front that makes invasion plans risky and costly. Here's another point. China faces multiple fronts at once. If they try to conquer Taiwan while also intimidating the Philippines, they stretch themselves too thin. Imagine Beijing ordering an invasion of Taiwan while at the same time worrying about U.S. and Filipino forces striking from the south and Japanese forces striking from the north. It creates a 2- or even 3-front war, and China is not prepared for that. They may have numbers, but they lack the real-world combat experience compared to the U.S. and its allies. And here is the kicker. Every year that passes, the Philippines gets closer ties with more countries. Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia are also watching closely, because they too have disputes with China. So if Beijing goes too far, it could unite almost the entire region against them. Instead of scaring their neighbors, China has accidentally created a coalition that blocks their ambitions. That is why experts now say China has almost no chance of successfully conquering Taiwan, as long as the Philippines plays its role. It is like a giant chessboard, and the Philippines is the key piece that prevents China from checkmating Taiwan. But let's imagine for a moment China tries anyway. They send ships, planes, and troops across the Taiwan Strait. What happens? First, U.S. bombers from Philippine bases strike their fleets. Submarines sink transport ships carrying soldiers. Intelligence from Philippine and Taiwanese cooperation exposes their movements. Japan launches counterattacks from the north, and within days, China's invasion force is crippled. And without supplies, even if some troops land on Taiwan, they get cut off, surrounded, and destroyed. The result is a disaster for China, and the end of their dream to conquer Taiwan. This is why military planners in Beijing are so worried. They know Taiwan itself is tough to invade. But when you add in the Philippines, it becomes nearly impossible. So the next time you hear about tensions in the South China Sea or joint drills between the U.S. and the Philippines, remember, This is not just about fishing rights or small islands. This is about the future of Taiwan and whether China can ever fulfill its biggest goal. The truth is, the Philippines has already changed the balance of power. Beijing wanted to isolate Taiwan, but instead, it isolated itself. The Philippines has turned into a shield that protects Taiwan, and every step China takes to threaten Manila only makes that shield stronger. China thought it could intimidate its smaller neighbors. But what actually happened is those neighbors started working together. And now the road to Taiwan is blocked from every direction. And here's the most ironic part of it all. China once believed the Philippines was weak, divided, and easy to control. But now it finds itself in a position where this very country holds the key to stopping its most important mission. And this is the ultimate reason why China's dream of conquering Taiwan may remain just that, a dream. As long as the Philippines stands strong and continues to resist Beijing's pressure, China cannot win the war it wants to fight, no matter how many ships, planes, or missiles it builds. Because at the end of the day, strategy, location, alliances, and the will of the people matter more than sheer numbers. And the Philippines has all of those on its side.